Lord. Will you not provide for us?
Someone! Help us!
A very dramatic start to this year's week of Twixmas reflections prepared by the Stamford Methodist Circuit. For those of you who may be new to Twixmas, every year members of the circuit put together a series of short reflections, one per day, which takes us through the week between Christmas and the New Year. This year we fashioned the series around the theme "There is Room." This has been the theme of the British Methodist Church during the period of Advent and over Christmas. And so today we begin with the story of Mary and Joseph, and we take the title, "There is Room for All." Let's hear how the Gospel of Matthew, the first book of the New Testament in the Bible, introduces the story. And as you listen, see whether the account inspires you or jars with you. Being completely honest, I begin firmly in that second camp.
This is how the birth of Jesus the Messiah came about. His mother Mary was pledged to be married to Joseph. But before they came together, she was found to be pregnant through the Holy Spirit. Because Joseph, her husband, was faithful to the law and yet did not want to expose her to public disgrace, he had in mind to divorce her quietly. But after he had considered this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, "Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary home as your wife, because what is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins." All this took place to fulfill what the Lord had said through the prophet. "The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel," which means God with us. When Joseph woke up, he did what the angel of the Lord had commanded him, and took Mary home as his wife. But he did not consummate their marriage until she gave birth to a son. And he gave him the name Jesus.
Here is the reason why, on first reading, that version of the story jars with me. It begins okay. This is how the birth of Jesus the Messiah came about. Okay, we're diving straight in, straight to the point. This is how it all came about. I can get on board with that. His mother Mary was pledged to be married to Joseph. But before they came together, she was found to be pregnant through the Holy Spirit. Mary was found to be pregnant, and it's that word "found." and then through the Holy Spirit. There's no announcements here. God's not talking through God's plan, just wham bam, and this young girl with her whole life ahead of her is pregnant. And people are about to start judging her, and her future husband is getting ready to abandon her. This girl who had everything ahead of her is suddenly facing a life of uncertainty and doubt and fear. And in the wording of Matthew, she's had no choice in this. And the angel that speaks to Joseph doesn't help the situation either. Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary home as your wife, because what is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. What is conceived in her, not the child or the baby, but words which from me read as that thing, oh, that comes from God. That phrasing of God doing things to people without their choice or involvement and leaving them in situations where they then struggle because they haven't had any control in what's happened. That's a view of Christianity, a view of God, and a view of Christmas which many people have today. In a world where we wrestle with people's rights to their own bodies, to their own lives, going right back through slavery, looking at abortion laws in some countries at the moment, looking at the churches and almost all public institutions which now have a long history of abuse and then condemnation of victims because of this system. When we look at all of that, and then look at Matthew's version of the beginning of the Christmas story, I wonder how it is possible for people to really hear there is room for all in God's love, or whether it becomes a story which makes people run for the hills. And even if we put Mary's story aside, we now have Joseph, who also hasn't had any say in the matter. He's going to become a father, basically, to someone else's child. And even if the family keep that fact secret from the world, he will be condemned as his first child was born out of wedlock. In a world where fathers' rights are often ignored, where the balance between the mothers and fathers in relationships when it comes to children are so difficult, because how do you give both parents an equal right of decision and choice? Where so many families are living separately, where parents pay child support without ever being able to see their child. Is this a story actually inviting us in, showing us there is room for all in God's love? But let's stop for a moment and reframe our thinking to see what Matthew is actually telling us. Because the interpretation I've just given, whilst it is today held by many people, is not actually the story as it is given to us. The Gospel of Luke, the third book in the New Testament, gives much more detail about Mary and her decisions within it of what is about to happen. Mary listens to God, prays it all through, and she will continue to pray through her life. And she agrees. She gives permission to God for the story to begin. And sitting with the story as told by Matthew, we now get to focus on the reaction of Joseph as Joseph and God interact. Joseph is a man of honour. He knows what the religious rules tell him he should do with his pregnant fiancée, but Joseph is not prepared to publicly humiliate Mary. This is a man of honour and a man of love, a man who knows God not just through a list of commandments and rules written in a book, but a man who knows the living, loving God who offers us life in all its abundance. And I think God recognises this in Joseph. And this makes Joseph the right man to raise Jesus. This man will be an important part of Jesus' life, raising Jesus in his humanity, teaching him the values which, when embedded in our lives, take us beyond being someone who blindly follows and enforces the law of God. Joseph goes so much deeper. So God places his most treasured possession into the hands of Joseph and Mary, knowing that all will be well. And as the two parents cradle the infant Jesus, so God cradles us and our world, and we are united through pure love. So come, you are welcome. There is room for all, not for us to be forced into a mould of set beliefs with which we can fail if we don't get it exactly right, with which we have no choice or decision, but just need to blindly follow. There is room for us to stand as those young new parents with their first child in their arms, with the potential of all that can be as they grow together as a family and learn about each other as they learn about themselves. There is room for you. Come and see.
Cold December Eve, there's a star in the east, illuminating the fields that lie beneath. Travelers journey from so far away to visit a child in a manger he lay, who knew that night would hold the greatest story ever told. On this holiest of nights, we let light into our lives. This child, a guide forevermore. The earth, the sky become as one as mortals, never now alone. Peace and love, what a sight on this holiest of nights. Angels sing, glory on high, peace be with you, friends, on this beautiful night. Wise men bring precious gifts for the Prince of Peace as he sleeps on the hay, who knew this night would hold the greatest story ever told. On this holiest of nights, we let light into our lives. This child, a guide forevermore. The earth, the sky become as one as mortals, never now alone. Peace and love, what a sight on this holiest of nights. Look at the stars shining bright on this holy, holy night. Look at the stars shining bright on this holy, holy night. On this holiest of nights, we let light into our lives.